Welcome to a special St. Valentine's Day edition of Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. And today I really wanted to talk about a part of the Bible that we don't often talk about very often. You don't often hear it preached about, but is very apt on this occasion. And that is, of course, the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon is one of two books in the Bible that doesn't mention God. Now, the other one is the book of Esther. And the fact that Esther doesn't actually mention God by name, God's all over that book. You know, it's all about the preservation of God's people during their time in exile. But the Song of Solomon's a little bit different, or the Song of Songs, as it is sometimes called. And generally, you find Christians taking one of two approaches to the Song of Songs and Song of Solomon. One of them is to just look at it in a purely natural sense, that this is just basically a good marriage manual for the Israelites and how to have a good relationship, including the physical element of the relationship. And that's it, that there's no spiritual content to it whatsoever. I have to say that to me that doesn't make a lot of sense, because why put it in the Bible for that reason? The other approach is to take a hyper-spiritual approach where everything is just, it's not actually about marriage, it's not actually about a husband and wife getting together in the bedroom, but it's just all about our relationship with Jesus. And it's all very, sometimes people take a very allegorical approach, which is where they take every little detail and says, but this is talking about this aspect of the Christian faith. The problem is, you say, well, how do you know it's talking about that? Because it's like you're just plucking a meaning out of thin air and applying it to it when we can't clearly see that in the text. There's also the problem that while the Bible, both Old and New Testament, does indeed refer to the church as the bride of Christ, and that's a good and a fitting illustration. When we get into the physical details of a physical, intimate relationship and start saying that applies to God and the church, I believe there's problems with that. So what do we make of this book? If the spiritual approach isn't working, and if the just purely physical approach isn't working, what are we to make of this? Well, I picked up a little commentary on the Song of Songs. It's part of the Tyndale Old Testament commentaries series that are always I find very sound and biblical from an evangelical standpoint. And this one's written by Ian Dugwood, who's a Bible college professor in the United States. Not somebody I'd ever heard of before, but he actually brings this great approach that, as he sees it, the Song of Solomon paints a picture of an ideal marriage. The most important relationship that probably any of us in a human level can have on our lives. It says, look, this is what the ideal looks like. This is what a perfect marriage would look like, with such a massive depth of love between two people. And most of us, whether we consider we have a good marriage or not, would say, well, we're probably not there yet. And the idea is that we look at that and we say, well, you know what? For my marriage to reflect God's beauty, I need God's help. I'm not yet at this ideal. I'm not yet at this point of effectiveness. And so I need God's continual help in my marriage relationship to make it a better reflection of the love of God for the human race, and for me in particular. And so that spurs us as Christians to say we need to have marriages, and by God's help we can have marriages that come a lot closer to the ideal and will stand out from the mess, to be honest, that is so much of the marriages and intimate relationships that we see people engaging in the world. You know, sometimes as Christians, we're very quick to lecture non-Christians on matters of sexual morality and how they're married, what marriage is and what marriage should be and everything else. And I've often thought that if we as Christians would actually put more effort into living out good Christian marriages, then that would be far more effective than all the lectures, because people would look at us and say, wow, I look at these Christians and look at the marriages they've got. I wish my marriage was like that. And that would be a much powerful incentive for people to understand God's standards when it comes to morality and intimacy. So I just want to say today, on this Valentine's Day, to any of you, those of you that are married, to those who are contemplating getting married, the Song of Solomon is there so that we can see that God has an ideal for marriage. And you know what? We're not there yet, but we're not there yet in so many other areas of our lives. But the closer we get to Jesus, the closer we get to the ideal. And I pray that today, hopefully you've got someone that you can share love with and show love to. And may God enable you to do that in a way that glorifies him and brings you to a point where you can actually be a living out example of God's love for others. May God help us to do that today in Jesus' name. God bless you. Join us again next time for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.